And we'll start off with the waving. Hello, everybody. How you doing? Josiah has joined me today. Josiah, I got to read his book, The Last Ranger, during the course of the Spiffbo Summer Readathon, and loved it. So I wanted to have him on and have him talk with you about it. So, Josiah, do you want to introduce yourself? Who are you? What are you all about? Your hopes, your dreams?
Oh, I love these introductions, right? We're all always so fluid with them. Sure. So I'm Josiah, aka JDO Rosell. Been writing for about 6 years now, or publishing, I should say. Writing much longer before that. And then, yeah, I have about 12 epic fantasy novels full time for a couple years now. And yeah, just loving it here in Colorado.
So, before we start, actually, the whole point of this is for people to get to know you and buy your books. So, first of all, I want to say if you would like a completely free introduction, Josiah, where should they go?
My website, jdlrosell.com. Yeah, so for this series, which we'll be talking about The Last Ranger and Ranger of the Titan Wilds, that'll be Ranger's Justice. So if you just navigate to, there's a free books tab, but there's also, if you just go to my books, you can find it from there. So.
And do you have a free book available for each one of your series?
Yeah, the idea is to like do a free prequel beforehand. So just kind of give people a taste of what's coming. They want to keep going.
I think that's fantastic. So, if you have any qualms about, oh, gee, I don't know, you've got multiple options for free. And then, if you wanted somebody to start with your series, do you have a preference for one over another that you like more, or that you feel people have reacted to more?
Right. Yeah, it's always a tough question, isn't it? But
which one is your favorite baby?
But usually, I love the one that I've just done recently, right? It's like, oh, that's probably my best work, right? So I typically recommend these days Ranger of the Titan Wilds.
Ranger of the Titan Wilds?
My most recent ongoing series.
So let's talk a little bit about your Spiffbo experience so far. Yeah. Has it been fun? Has it been weird? Why did you wait so long to join Spiffbo?
Oh, I've been this is my third year.
Third year.
Yeah. So I started off in 2020, as everybody was doing like things online in 2020, right? Started off with one of my other series, and then I've kind of been, I guess actually this is my fourth year. So done one for each of my series starters. But yeah, I mean, Spiffbo's been great. I enjoyed it that first year. Managed to get a semifinalist position there. So I was like, okay, let's just keep going. Let's see if we can get a little further. Nothing's happened so far this year. I'm on the fantasy book critic team. Which team is that? The team you're on?
Oh yeah, we're both in the fantasy book critic group, and I thought they've been great. I like the way that they kind of divided everybody up into like groups of 6, and they've been rolling out their eliminations kind of on a regular basis.
Right.
I thought has been cool.
Yeah, and were you in the interviews that they did recently? They had like some kind of debut interviews, I think. But I'll have to check that out as well. But yeah, so who was it that has your review?
I can't remember. Mahir, I think.
Was that? What was that? Sorry.
Mahir.
Oh, okay. So I think we're actually in different like little mini groups.
Yeah, different cadres.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll be interested to see once we get to each of ours.
Have you noticed anything that's different from this year than in years previous? Or is it like, to me right now, it just feels like a lot of hurry up and wait, because it's like, I keep waiting for your cut. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's mostly what this stage is all about. And it's just like people go at different paces, right? Which, it's fun to see. There's a bit of that tension of, lead up to your review, right? You're like, oh, okay, so I made it past this little round, okay, it's not yet. So there's that excitement, right? But then once the finalists get going, that's when it really starts, speed picks up.
Right. It's where the craziness starts happening.
Yeah.
I love the fact that this thing exists.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it is, it speaks to the state of the industry that the damn thing closed out in 42 minutes.
Yeah, right. I know it was like 3 hours the year before that, 8 hours or something. So it's just getting crazier and crazier to get in.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, super grateful to Mark Lawrence for doing it, starting it. All the judges who just give so much time to it. It's
Right.
incredible, incredible. And yeah, I
Especially
mean, it's
ones that actually read 30 books that are assigned to them. It's like, what, are you nuts?
I know.
Although after the readathon, we had, I don't know, like 5 people read 25 books in a month. So, okay.
It's pretty insane. My speed is much slower than that.
Right? I cannot do that.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's an incredible contest. It's a shame that it had that AI controversy with the cover art, but um, I mean, I think it was probably inevitable with this stage that AI controversy is
Well,
at.
and I'm probably wrong because I don't pay enough attention, but it looked like the author thought that it was not AI
Right. Yeah.
and that the artist kind of bamboozled him a little bit. Is that
That's
kind
what it
of
seems like. Yeah.
yeah, no harm, no foul.
Right.
You
Right.
know, the guy wasn't intending to try and sneak it in. And it was a
Right.
sexy cover. I mean,
Oh yeah, for
Smoke
sure.
Beard was nice. Ooh, wow. Bob
You
the
can see the appeal to it for sure. And Bob the
Oh,
Wizard, like, come on, what a
yeah.
title!
Rock and roll with Bob the Wizard. So the I got to read Last Ranger during the readathon, and I was delightfully blown away by it.
Oh, thank you.
I
Appreciate
thought
that.
it was just stellar. And I'm just going to say right now, if you're watching this, pick up the damn book, read it. I hope you enjoy it because there's something inherently cool about Ranger, right? Are there Rangers in literature or film that you've been drawn to? Or
Well, I
things that
mean,
would satisfy that need?
it's got to start with the original Ranger, Aragorn, right? And specifically Strider.
Yeah,
So, like, when
right.
Strider walks onto the page in Fellowship of the Ring, I was just totally, totally there. Because I started reading those books when I was like 8, 9, something like that.
Yeah.
And so that just, I wanted to be, I think probably Strider was the one that I was like, oh, that's, I wish I could be like that.
He can
So,
do anything.
yeah, right. Yeah, he's like mysterious. He's cool. He's
He
like
doesn't even have a
competent.
sword.
Right.
He's still cool.
Right. So true. Yeah.
Broken sword.
So I loved his portrayal of it, and kind of Legolas is honestly a bit of a ranger, more like the Dungeons and Dragons kind of ranger.
Yeah.
So also loved Legolas, as well as in the movies, of course. But yeah, I mean, playing them in games too, like Baldur's Gate.
Yep.
I would often play a ranger sort of character because, yeah, just find it super appealing and super fun.
A little bit of sneak, a little bit of hide. Are you a D&D guy?
Oh, only a little bit.
Okay.
I've only dabbled in it. I've been in a couple campaigns and ran a very short one as well. So, but yeah, I think it's super fun.
How is running a campaign?
I just used one of the starter ones. It
Okay.
wasn't my personality doesn't really work because I'm very scatterbrained.
Okay.
Which you need to be the opposite as a dungeon master.
Yeah.
But but it was still a lot of fun and people had fun. It was like a pandemic sort of short campaign that we did.
Yeah. Oh, so you didn't do like the whole Mines of Phandelver or anything like that?
It wasn't the whole thing, but I think it was the start of that one.
Oh, cool.
Correctly. Yeah.
That's perfect. So one of the things that I really liked about this book is that more than anything else I've ever read, I think that's a valid statement, the idea of the Ranger got dug into so deep and so well. And the thing that made that Green Ranger's cloak work so well was the environment that you put them in.
Yeah, sure.
Where did the frickin' Titan Wilds come from? That is awesome.
Yeah, I think that in the concept of just diving deep into a ranger archetype character, those are the two probably the founding ideas.
Yeah.
Well, along with a revolution a Revolutionary War thanks to Hamilton. So I would
Oh,
got
that
that
actually,
from
okay, that gets to something that I want to talk about. So this had basis in Revolutionary War on purpose from the beginning.
yes, yeah,
Wunderbar. Okay, great.
yeah.
That helps.
Yeah, and particularly from Hamilton, how it captures like different emotions of characters for that. Like obviously the actual war as well from history, but I loved Hamilton's portrayal of that and like the pizzazz with which they presented it. But yeah,
What is this Hamilton of which you speak? I simply do not know.
I was like, wait a second, are you serious?
No, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool theater geek. Believe me.
Oh, nice, love it. So are you a Hamilton fan then too?
My son can sing most of the songs, right? I mean, we have watched and listened to, like, we go on a road trip, and that's job one, right?
Yeah,
Here's your
yeah.
first 3 hours of your road trip.
It's perfect for that. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of perfect in general, but I don't want to necessarily talk about
True.
Hamilton. I want to talk about you and like with the Titan Wilds. I want to get
Right.
back
Yeah.
there.
Sure.
With the Titan Wilds, was that born of anything in particular? Was there an idea that was out in the ether that you said, "Ooh, I like that. Let me play with it"? How did that come together?
Yeah. Sure. So the general landscape, I just drew inspiration from Colorado. That's basically what I modeled. Just the topography and the geography and the flora and fauna. As far as the Titans themselves, that came from that reference. I think it's in The Hobbit of stone giants.
Mm-hmm. Where they're
So it
chucking rocks in the lightning storm.
And yeah, I guess you see it in the movie, right? They made a
Oh
whole
yeah,
scene
I
out of
forgot
it.
about seeing it in the movie.
Yeah. So it was from that idea of some elemental being, um, and like taking different forms and being part of the landscape and reshaping the landscape and just kind of being this almost natural disaster walking. So I just wanted like, oh, what if like what would it be like to live in this sort of landscape where that's like dominated by that? So yeah, that's kind of where the idea came from. Evolved from there.
I just thought it was spectacular
Thank you.
because you had an environment where anything was possible, right? I didn't know really what was going to happen at any given moment or if anyone was safe because the land itself could come alive at any given moment and crush everybody. Right?
It often did, right?
Yeah. So, hey guys, it's lunchtime and you're all dead.
I mean, that's almost literally a scene, right?
Right.
Oof.
Okay, so that answers one of the questions that I got further down the list, though. Is so the sun coats are the red coast.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Yep. You got it exactly.
Well, I almost feel proud of myself. Well, because it took a bit, right? It was maybe page 100, 150 before I started to go, hey, this kind of feels like the American Revolution. Hey, this kind of feels like the Native Americans. Hey, this kind of feels like, rule from overseas. I'm waiting for King George to show up and do a number.
Right. All right. We haven't gotten to his song yet, but we'll get there.
We'll do Last Ranger the musical.
Ooh, I would sell that. So
right. We'll get together. We'll put together a score and a libretto. We'll be all set. So, with the Titans being born of that kind of Tolkien foundation, like how did that is it all laid out in your head of these things are here and these things are here? There's a map of it, or is it like more like I'm going to introduce this thing when it's the right moment in the story?
Yeah, I mean a bit of both, right?
Okay.
So there's certain landscape features and certain weather that lends itself to different Titans. So when those are present, you can assume that there might be a Titan of that variety around, right?
Mm-hmm.
But a matter of when it's awakening, yeah, I mean that's plot convenience for some part of it. But of course, as you found out reading through Ranger, it's not all just plot. It has to do partly with the characters.
The character, very, 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 very much so, which is also part of what I enjoyed about Leia. So, have you gotten flack about I didn't like this character because? Do you get a lot of that? Because
have I ever?
Okay. Talk to me about because I think it's a bold choice. So go.
Yeah, I was very nervous releasing this book because of Leian's character. Which for people who haven't read the book, she's very hard-edged. And even more than that, particularly, she is racist at the beginning of the book. So that is very hard boulder to push uphill to get people to, want to read about her and empathize with her, considering that, which, I can totally get. I think as the author, knowing where she was going towards the end of the book and in the series, that was a little easier for me, right? But I didn't anticipate quite for the readers how hard that would be, which, I totally understand now. But yeah, no, and so there's the racism, which, yeah, totally understandable. Then there's also just who she is. There's you either vibe with that or you don't. And if you don't vibe with that, that really makes it hard to enjoy the book. But sometimes the world building would still carry it. so I was like, okay, everybody likes the world building, so that's at least okay.
Well, that's an interesting point because the world building can carry it if you're not invested in the character until the turn begins. And then
I guess that's the hope, right?
Things start to happen because I was reading through the reviews. I was like, oh, okay, I get what they're saying about not like, but at the same time, there are plenty of characters in fiction that are not particularly likable characters who provide a satisfying arc. And once I started realizing what was going, like, she's a little bit of a racist because at the beginning I'm with her, right? At the beginning I'm just like, oh, these are bad guys.
Yeah,
and
that's interesting because for me, I guess I just knew what my intentions were. I guess it's part of it, right? And in her mind, she very much sees them as the bad guys, right? So that's totally understandable how you would see that. But then you get the other characters, her friends and stuff like that, piping up and saying, hey, you might not be right about this, right? So then you're like, oh, wait a second. We might be seeing this wrong from her perspective.
Which I loved because it was a tough putt, right? This was not an easy setup, easy knockdown. You said, I'm going to go for something that's challenging and make that satisfying, which I think is, it's a higher bar. And watching you jump it successfully is much more satisfying than just watching somebody do a Fosbury flop.
Yeah. So thank you. I'm glad that it worked for you. First off. But yeah, having inheriting racist views or any kind of bias from your background, from events that happen to you, that's not going to be an easy thing to get over, even if you end up being plainly wrong as she is in this case, which usually it's plainly wrong, right? But she finds she's plainly wrong, and still it's a hard thing to overcome, right?
Which is what was satisfying about it.
Yeah,
it's like you this is not how it works. You don't come to this sudden realization and an epiphany and change everything about yourself from this one realization. It takes time to turn the houseboat.
Yeah. So I wanted to make that pretty painful, and sometimes people don't want all that pain, which I can understand. But yeah, I'm glad that it felt genuine and effective.
Oh, it gave her root as a character, because at first I was with her and then I started to realize maybe not. And then she stuck with it long past the point that I had let it go, which was fun to watch. right?
Yeah.
And then she starts to make the turn. And I just thought, well, as Craig says, it's a really good story.
Oh, thank you, Craig. Appreciate that.
And Bex is completely behind the idea of fantasy musical.
So true. There is a fantasy musical show that I still need to watch. Do you know which one I'm talking about? It's like
I've seen the
medieval.
one that was completely silly.
Right.
That was the king and the knight and the princess, and it was just a kind of silly TV, musical of the week type thing. I
But
can't
a
remember.
serious one? That would be crazy.
It was not serious. It was
I
just
know.
comic. Oh my! Can you imagine trying to come up with a serious musical number even a comic musical number every week would be difficult.
Seriously.
It's like, no, we're going to do a big one every week.
Just epic Game of Thrones style musical.
And everybody's singing like this, standing on the edges of balconies wherever they can find them.
Hey, they'd have at least a couple viewers here, right?
Grimdark, the musical.
The musical, right.
Everything's in a minor key and it's only a bass.
Can you imagine the first law, Each of those characters, Glockta singing about his agony walking up these stairs again.
Logan's like, I miss my pot.
Oh, man. All right, who do we talk to about this? Who knows some of the directors?
We'll let Joe Abercrombie know. Hey, speaking of, I don't think the Kickstarter is still open, but you've got like a special edition Big Deal Wingding coming out, right?
Yeah, no, that one's coming up still. So,
yeah. Do you have access to the comments from where you are?
Let's see. But yeah, that one is for a different series, but it's for my Legend of Tall series.
Yeah, Legend of Tall.
But yeah, for sure. I don't know if I have the general comments. Oh wait, here?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind pasting the link to the Kickstarter in there. Hey folks, while Josiah is looking up the link to the Kickstarter, we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to go there and donate some of your funds toward bringing the Legend of Tall to life in big, robust, colorful form in the sexiest possible version you can imagine. Josiah's will put that link up for you this very moment. Donations of $100 minimum.
That's right. That's right. Don't come around if you don't have at least a couple grand.
That's right. It's a Benjamin only. It's a Benjamin and up. If you've got 10 Hamiltons, you can participate. But otherwise, and while we're waiting, I like the idea of Glockta's big number. The stairs.
It's got to be. There's nothing else.
And at the end of the
it's this inventory chamber, right? Like there's bloody tools hanging around. Somebody's on the table, and he's just talking about stairs.
Practical Frost is like a high tenor.
Yes. By the way, I can't connect my YouTube, but I put it in our private comments. If you could grab that.
I can do that.
That's possible.
If I can find the private chat.
I'm glad that we're at least getting Joe Abercrombie. I think it was a TV show, or was it a movie?
Oh, we want money. We want money. So we're going with TV show. We want as many episodes as we can get. And then there will also be a video game tied to the television show where you can perform your own songs and a Dance Dance Revolution version of the first law. The first law is dance.
Oh, jeez. I can already see the bestseller status.
So that just went up in the comments. So if you have the opportunity and you would like to support Josiah and help this book become a reality, please link on to that and give at least $100. 1,000 is really what we're looking for.
Sure.
But if 100 is all you have,
thank you, Andy, and thanks everybody.
Meanwhile, John Douglas is what the. And it's first law of the musical.
Yep, that's it. That's it exactly, John.
So,
Starting the petition.
so where did this story start with first Last Ranger? Actually, let me back up for a second. Actually, let me back up all the way. So in your bio, The Hobbit gets a listing. Now, given what you said earlier, I'm going to take a guess that you were one of those kids that read The Hobbit in like first or second grade.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
And was that the one? It just stuck and hit?
Yeah, it was The Hobbit. I read all of the trilogy as well, but
Sure.
The Hobbit probably still is my favorite of Tolkien stuff. It's just like such a perfect adventure, great pacing, great characters, right? It's just got a
Yes.
great tone. I love it.
I love the fact that it never takes itself too seriously and yet manages to hit on a couple of things and emotions that matter
Yeah,
and make you feel something. And the reticent hero, I don't think has ever been done better. Where it's
yeah,
just like, look, I
yep.
am a fat middle-aged man. I like cake. I like tea. Go take a walk, Gandalf. That's nice. Thank you so much for showing up. Bye-bye.
But then he transitions him too, into being really adventuresome and coming into his own.
An
And you believe it every
an
step of the way.
actual adventure.
Yeah.
And that arc is so good because by the time he descends into Smaug's cavern, Smaug in a cabin, that'd be burned down very quickly.
Yeah.
You
Smoking
believe him as the burglar, that he was purported to be from the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I feel like since he's more active than Frodo, I kind of enjoyed him more as a protagonist too.
Yep.
And he has his own adventures too, I guess. Sam really carries Frodo. Let's be real.
Oh yeah, Frodo is kind of almost like the ring itself. He just needs to be moved from one place to another, and everybody else helps him get there. Nothing against Frodo, but yeah, everybody likes Sam more than Frodo. Everybody likes Aragorn more than Frodo. Everybody likes Legolas more than Frodo. With the other thing about The Hobbit that really got me is I really enjoyed the episodic nature of it, where we go from now we're with the trolls, now we're with the elves, now we're with the spiders, now we're with Beorn, now we're with. I enjoy that very, very, very much. So that was the thing that kind of inspired you to start. And then you said you had been writing for a long time before you ever published.
Yeah, that's true. So I went to college. So basically, being a writer is the only thing I really ever wanted to do. Obviously, I've had to try to do other things in the meantime, but I went to college and I studied it there as well and did a master's in creative writing as well.
Oh, you got your master's in creative writing.
Yeah.
The second most useless degree.
Oh, what's the first?
Philosophy.
Yeah, of course. Don't tell me. Did you get a master's in philosophy?
Oh no, I got the
okay.
third most useless, which is theater.
Oh, there you go.
Actually, it's probably second most useful. I mean, at least with writing, you can write. With theater, you can't do anything.
There's things. Productions,
No,
right?
There's not. So, okay, but you've been writing for a long time. You got a graduate degree. What did that look like before you ever published? What did that look like?
Agony and toil.
Agony and toil for an audience of one.
Right, exactly. I mean,
Okay.
Fortunately, my wife has always read my stuff, so I did have an audience of 1.5, if myself was included. There you go, Bex. I was a theater geek from high school, at least, but I didn't do college stuff. Yeah. So, what it was like? So, I guess after college or from my master's, I wrote my first novel. So I at least had a novel written by the time I left the program.
Okay,
And
great,
I published
great.
that one, but I ended up unpublishing it because it was very grimdark, and that wasn't the tone I decided to keep going with. and I wasn't going to continue that series. So I decided to pull it, even though I like it, but yeah, then since then I tried a few things. Oh, go
Time,
ahead.
time. Hang on, kid. So why grimdark? Why make it? And why stop?
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to be this kind of dark, serious guy when you were in school and that went away, or
Mm.
why?
I think it had to do with what was in vogue then. So I was so Game of Thrones, I think, was still airing at that point, which is kind of in that vein.
Sure.
I had just read Joe Abercrombie, you know, probably while I was writing it, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. So that captivated me as well. I can't remember if the fifth season was out then too, but that also is one of my favorite books. And so, like, there's all these grimdark influences um, that made me want to write one of my own. But once I wrote it, I was like, this is not exactly what I want my writing to be. Um, so then I've pivoted pretty much since then, and I have some darkness, but some light.
Okay, that's interesting. So, did it feel like were you drawing poison from the wound and got all that teenage angst out of your system?
Right, like early 20s,
Yeah,
angst, don't know what to do with the world. I mean, that's kind of what the character was too. So I think there was some self-insertion in that book
sure.
particularly. But yeah, no, I think that's quite possible. Some kind of it was basically a nihilistic world as well, where there was inherently no gods and no meaning. So I think you're totally right. There's some
Sounds like
lingering
college.
angst. Yeah, right. Yep, yeah.
I'm smarter than everyone, and no one understands the tragedy.
Yep. I mean, I almost studied poetry as a for my master's. So I mean, if that tells you anything.
Yeah. Okay. So that started, and yet I'm very happy that you came out of the graduate program with a finished work. I almost feel like that should be a requirement.
Yeah.
This
Agreed.
is how to finish a novel. Let's
Yeah.
finish. So ever since then, I mean, I'm looking at the friggin' roster of books. I don't think you've got one older than 2018.
Yeah, there's 2017 for
Okay,
my
there's a
lit RPG
2017 that I know.
stuff, but that's it.
And how many titles since 2017?
If we're including unpublished and lit RPG and ghost written stuff, I think that is 19.
Okay. How in the pluperfect hell have you managed to create 19 works in 7 years?
You just gotta not have a life, just don't go outside your house, don't ever leave. Stay in your writing cave, lots of coffee. I mean, in all seriousness, I think I write decently clean and decently quickly. um I I do think about it quite a bit. I spend quite a bit of time in the seat. I don't have kids. I think that probably frees up a lot of time. And now I'm full time at it, which gives me a lot more time too, right? So I think all of those things combined. Um, I guess I had a job that was work from home, and I was able to when I had a job, was able to transition back to part time as well. That also helped me balance the writing and other things.
So are you the rare unicorn of the indie writer that has managed to make a career out of it?
Guess so. Yeah, yeah. It's been since February 2021, so still
Okay.
able to go strong.
From all of us, I would just like to say congratulations. God bless you, and you're amazing.
Oh, thanks, Andy.
That that is the toughest putt there is.
It was that first year. Yeah, I had a lot of anxiety. I probably should have been on some meds. Um, it was not good. I was unhappy, to be quite honest. But yeah, I mean, since then, once I made it through that first initial stage, it's been great. It's been awesome.
And Bex wants to know, did you always want to be a unicorn?
I mean, they're beautiful, they're unique. Who doesn't want to be a unicorn? It's where the title came from, The Last Ranger, too, right? The Last Unicorn. I mean,
The Last Unicorn.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay.
Yes.
You are a bootstrap levitation guy. You have taken the last 7 years and forged your own life out of all of this.
I mean, it sounds good when you put it like that. I was just mostly just labor in anonymity, right? It's not glorious, but
did you have a series where you felt like it tipped over, where it was like, oh, this might actually be within reach?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the Legend of Tall series.
Okay.
My previous more successful series. So that one, with the first book's release, it was released June 2020. And so like right as the pandemic was really ramping up, is like, and everybody's like locked down at that point, right?
Right. Right when the pandemic was really boring.
Yeah. You couldn't even go outside to like national parks at that point. They like literally everything closed. That's when I released it. It seems a bit like a risk, but I wanted to get it into that first SPIFBO. So and June 1st was the cutoff for that. So that's when I decided to release it. I did some marketing. I had some experience with releasing books at that point, but I still only kind of knew what I was doing.
Sure.
But it ended up working out and got picked up by the algorithm, the Amazon algorithm. So that's when things started to change, and I was like, oh, maybe I could do this. And eventually, leading from that, the next year, I did make that leap.
Absolutely stellar. Praise. I'm sorry, I won't keep going. I wanted to ask you about, is it Tadeo or Tadeo, or
yeah,
you get used to them in the books, but you don't know how to actually pronounce them.
Yeah, so Tadeo, a lot of the Baltasian culture is Spanish influenced, like particularly Spain. So yeah, a lot of the pronunciations will be like Spanish.
Okay. How did Tadeo come about? What did you want to build in with that idea?
As the mentor figure?
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. So Leon has a couple role models, and both of them really male in this context. So both father figures.
Yeah.
And partly that's to make her feel the lack of a mother even more, by not having a mother stand-in. But partly was what's that? Sorry.
Which is kind of the root of who she is.
And root of a lot of trauma problems, right? Yeah. But then to also pit these more directly in contrast to each other at different points, because they both give her lessons that she needs to survive, essentially. But in some ways, these lessons clash a lot. Like Tadeo is very open, and she's very open-minded, and her father is more hard-edged and closed off. But to some extent, she needs that to survive as well, even though it results in her greatest flaw.
Okay. I really liked what you managed to do with Tadeo, and a mentor figure that spent no time, maybe a little, but very little time running roughshod over our main character and wagging the finger and saying this is the way. Like you did a great job of creating a mentor that you wanted to be feeding into her. And then ultimately, spoiler alert,
I mean, it says spoilers on the video, right? So
And then the other thing was on genuine questions. Like, I don't know at all with Isla, or what did you want her as part of the story for? Because she served a couple of different purposes for me. But I'm just, from a storytelling perspective, what was the necessary driving factor behind her character and your creation of her? Because I thought it was really interesting.
okay, yeah. So there's some narrative things. There's some like as in she helps drive the action a
Yep.
lot, right? Because I think also a big part was for Lan's character.
Mhm.
Having Isla balance her out as a foil was one big part. Having her care about someone that much that she'll do anything to make sure she's okay. Uh, that gives some empathy for Lan that might be lacking in other areas.
Which is what I thought worked so well.
Good, yeah, I like perfect. um, but then, yeah, Isla, she doesn't get. She has a bit of an arc in this one. Probably doesn't have as much of an arc as some side characters, but she's definitely has some things in store in the coming books as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, I liked her for all of those things, and she brings in a different culture. Part of one thing I wanted was a very multicultural party. So basically, you're representing four different cultures. Even though she grew up in Baltasia, she's
Yep.
originally from one of the neighboring colonies, which was based off of sort of African influence.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah, I think that's basically what I was looking for with Isla.
Well, like, when I say, let's go back to First Law, right? There's a scene that pops out in your head, or a moment that pops out in your head. And to me, with Last Ranger, it's that moment when Lan and Isla are hunkered down, and Lan's forced into this caregiver position where I was genuinely, I didn't know what the result was going to be and whether she was going to make it through it. So like when I think of Last Ranger, that's the moment that I think of. And
Okay.
to me, that was, I liked that as an emotional hook so much, because you've got this hard bitten, tough as nails ranger who's going to stand up to anybody and stand with her bow above them while they're making the caravan, and face down the leader of this other pack of guys that she hates with the jackals. And, but she's there in this, it's got that tender moment to it, right? It's that soft, quiet, little bit of desperation moment where it's like, there's nothing else I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, the two of them laying together, kind of bunkered in to me. That was the moment that I knew. I was like, I am absolutely in on this story, no matter what.
I love that. I mean, because that scene's all just about. I mean, nothing's much happening for a lot of it, right? She's just trying everything she knows how to do to keep her alive.
Yeah.
Until she has to do the one thing that she doesn't want to do.
Right.
And I think she says something like this. She's like, if I have to be damned to save my friend, I will do that.
I will do
so
it.
Yeah, I'm glad that stuck with you.
Oh yeah. At the beginning, and I don't want you to take this as a negative thing. This is a positive thing. But to me, it was a lot of the Lone Ranger, right? I've got,
which I've never seen, but
and it's nothing that you ever see really in a Lone Ranger television show. It's in the movies a little bit,
sure.
but the idea of why he's the Lone Ranger is the thing that stood out. And again, not to spoil too much for everybody who hasn't read it, but when you come in and you break everything, it's horrific. And it's one of those moments where it's just like, oh, okay, we're actually doing this. And it's just like bodies on the dance floor, baby. and and
Yeah.
and
Burn it all
seeing
down.
yeah, and seeing her nature kind of rise out of that moment. I feel like, Isla is her Tonto. It's like, this is the one person that I will sacrifice anything for to keep this relationship and keep her. I will sacrifice myself in order to keep her alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that relationship between the two of them, me gusta.
Thank you. I love that.
Oh yeah. So the other one that I want to get to is the way that you treat racism in this book is exciting, and I love it, and I think it's amazing because, oh my gosh, it's so good. So one of the amazing things about fantasy is that you can take a real issue and put a different coat of paint on it, so that you can talk about it. And sci-fi very much so the same way, so that you can talk about it in a more removed fashion, where you're not taking any of your own garbage into this and you're going, oh, these people are black on one side and white on the other side, and vice versa. Oh, this is why they hate each other. Mm-hmm. And so the idea, the way that you brought in foundational racism from an American expansionist perspective into a fantasy book, I just think is killer and exciting and thrilling and amazing. So just talk about that for a second, because I will be happy listening.
So there's an inspiration for where the idea of looking especially at the relationship between colonialism and Native indigenous people, that came from the Soldier Sun trilogy by Robin Hobb.
Okay.
Which actually, some of the American Revolution stuff that also came from there, because it's a similar sort of setup. Okay. And that series, it's a little uneven. You gotta love it because it's Hobb still. Yeah. But
I'm just rediscovering. I tried Assassin's Apprentice 10, 15 years ago and didn't finish it because I wasn't in. Right. And then everybody kept saying, oh, Hobb, oh, Hobb. I was like, all right, whatever. And then I finally got, it was like, no, come and, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm reading Hobb now. And, I was wrong.
I was wrong the first time I tried Assassin's Apprentice too. I tried listening to it on audiobook, and I didn't even get probably through that prologue. I was just like, oh, this is just like, they're just telling us a bunch of, this is like nothing. Yeah. And then, again, I kept hearing about it, and now I'm on the last book on Assassin's Fate, and oh my gosh, I'm in so much pain, and I love it.
How far are you in? Are you at the end?
I'm probably 70% through.
Okay.
So things are happening.
They've arrived.
They've arrived, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, but talking about Soldier Sun trilogy, that one deals a lot with the indigenous peoples of that land, and like coming into conflict and some kind of resolution with the colonial peoples. So that's kind of, I wanted to play with that myself and deal more explicitly with the racism side of that, because there's definitely some racism in that, but I just wanted a different angle, make it more personal as well with Lan, with having what she assumes a shaman having killed her mother, right? So where was I going with that? Why I wanted to deal with racism. I mean, I think it's just good to deal with real issues. And I haven't seen it a whole lot in fantasy, or at least it's less common. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's just kind of where that it naturally is part of a colonialist world, right? And the horrific things that have often occurred when colonialism happens. So I felt it was important to address that if I'm going to have that kind of a world.
I absolutely like, to me, I've got a great world. Cool. I've got a character who I'm invested in, who isn't standard operating procedure for feature hero, who goes through this horrific thing that has me deeply invested. And like I said, with Isla, after that moment, I'm in. But the racism and the way that you deal with it and the way that it's woven into the story is the thing that made me love it. Right? Because it's that fourth layer underneath. It's that beating heartbeat underneath the whole thing that makes me go, oh my gosh, here's a guy who's got a story to tell. Right? You're not punching donuts. You're not just okay, next one, okay, next one, okay, next one. There's a reason why you're telling me this story, and it's there ingrained at the bottom. And the other thing I love, and I just need to give you kudos, is that you don't beat me over the head with it at the beginning. You let it trickle in as part of the story throughout, and let it kind of have its own moment in the sun, rather than just smacking with me with it right up top. Because honestly, I started on her side. I thought, okay, these are the bad guys, right? They're bad guys. So I think delving into that very real human quandary, I think just was killer. And I cannot sing your praises enough for doing it well.
Thank you. I mean, I still have quite a bit of imposter syndrome, right? Being a white person and talking about racism, I had to do it from a perspective of a colonial person, right? Because of that thing, but I'm glad that it came across as effective. Because I mean, I think it's something that everybody needs to deal with, no matter what your background is.
Well, and I like the fact that it being removed from reality gives you the opportunity to address it emotionally and intellectually from a more removed place, which kind of gets rid of some of the excuses or barriers or whatever that you've built up around this, that, and the other, and kind of makes you approach it in a fresh way, which is always valuable. So
and definitely you never want to be preachy, right? It has to be like, it can be a theme, but it has to be part of the story. It has to be part of the character and integral to both of those. And with yes, she comes to a resolution, but it's still a messy resolution. Like, things are not clear cut or anything like that. So, and I think I've always saw that as important, that things are grayscale.
Yeah, and satisfying. It's just the slow turn is so much better than the instant total recognition and changing of who you are and your character and the way you approach everything.
For sure.
With the natives, is it the Gast?
Ghasts, yeah.
Yeah, with the Ghasts in the book, did you base those solely on Native American? Did you incorporate some other pieces into that? Like, how did that development of that culture kind of go?
Yeah, so I was looking a bit at Aztecian people. I wanted it to feel like they had sort of an ancient culture that they were coming from, and I didn't want to particularly pick out any one, current indigenous people that it was based off, and I drew elements from various ones, but Aztec was the main one that I was sort of leaning into.
Nice. I gotta throw Craig's up here. Racism and Leon's journey through her discovery of difficult truths is what makes it stand apart. Yeah. Because there's action and adventure, and then there's character arcs, and then there's social themes. And honestly, most times people get into social themes, it feels very ham-handed, it feels preachy, it feels soapboxy, and it's like, okay, we're doing everything in black and white, and there's the right way and the wrong way, and never the twain shall meet. And it's like, no, the gray matters, because there's a big percentage of the population that's in the gray area. And being able to do it with a gentle hand, I think, is a rare gift. And I just will applaud you for being able to pull it off so well.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think I couldn't have written this novel before when I wrote it, because I just wouldn't have been able to do it justice, right? So I think it does it. Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing. Yeah, it took a lot of practice to get there. That's what I'm trying to say.
A gentle touch. It's a rare thing to have. The frontier environment. So let me put it the way that I see it or saw it, and you can tell me where I'm right and where I'm wrong, and I'm happy to be both. But once I started digging into, this feels like colonial America, all of a sudden the tone and the visuals of everything kind of started changing. And I started imagining the coastline as this route, here's the HQ, here's the base, right? And the further and further and further and further you got out from the coast, the more wild and crazy it became.
Yeah, like Wild West sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, but better than Wild West, because Wild West, the pioneers had already gone. They'd already come and, established a couple of towns. It felt like here's your coast, and then here's where the pioneers have been, and here's everything else.
Yep.
That goes on forever. And it felt like, it's like America. It goes on forever. And, it's going to take decades for us to even get from sea to shining sea, much less try to make anything, our version of civilization out of it. So did that feel similar for you? Is it different? Tell me a little bit about the feel of what the frontier feels like to you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you pretty much nailed it. That's how I picture it as well. So if you look at the map, you look at the coast, that's where basically all the major cities are. You keep going further in, there's this point, which is like a canyon, which I kind of imagine is sort of a Grand Canyon or something like that. Past that point, you just basically start getting wilder and wilder. Like that's the where civilization ends, and it's this very distinct place. So yeah, I mean, and with it being sort of a frontier, she becomes, like you said, like a lone ranger kind of figure as a ranger, but it's in a fantasy setting, so it doesn't really feel like she's a cowgirl or anything.
No. Not even.
But it still plays with these sort of Western themes of like independence, of like dealing with an untamed land. So yeah, there's some blending of genre in there as well.
And coming back around to where we started is the land itself is dangerous as hell. There's a part in Lonesome Dove where they talk about people going out into the plains, into the great grass sea, right? And they die because the grasses are so tall and they can't figure out where they are and they can't figure out where water is. And they just wander around blind for 3 weeks and starve to death.
That's I love that. Wait, what is Lonesome Dove? I don't know what that is.
What Lonesome Dove is really long is what Lonesome Dove is. Okay. But it is it the finest Western ever written? Yes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So cool. If you're at a point where you've got a ton of time, I can recommend it wholeheartedly simply because of the character work.
Perfect.
You don't need to worry about anything else. Yeah, you're good. But the world that you've put together, I think, is fantabulous. Are we just gonna do 3 books here?
No, 5 books.
Yay!
That's the idea.
That makes me happy.
Thanks.
Because it feels so deep, right? It was just like, okay, we can probably go for a while with this.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of world to cover, right?
There's meat on the bone.
There's a lot more trauma we can heap on land too, is the other thing.
Absolutely. Well, I promised you we wouldn't go over an hour, and here we are. So I just want to say, everybody, please take a read on Last Ranger. Please take a look at Legend of Tall. Please take a look at the Rune War cycle, the Famine cycle, Godslayer Rising. There are a lot of books to choose from. So if you've got any questions about whether or not you want to start reading Josiah's work, pick up any one of the free books that are available on his website and take a look and see if you like them. So Josiah, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll see you around the campfire. Good luck to both of us in Spitbo 9.
Yeah, seriously. Thank you, Andy. It's been great.